go ahead and get started. You want me to go first? Okay. Hello. Good to see all of you. I think the heater's going to shut off here in a minute so that we can all hear better. It's rather loud. Thank you for coming. Great to see all of you this morning. Nice turnout. Our format is typically the managers give a brief report about things that we're working on. As we talk about various projects or topics, you're welcome to jump in, raise your hand, and make comments, suggestions, questions. We're open to all of that. So Sara Austin, who is the village manager, is planning on attending our meetings as well. She couldn't be here this morning, but she'll be joining us many times. I put out on the table, before I forget, I put out a flyer on this table for our community cleanup, which is coming up April 4th. And that's the day that we'll have dumpsters out throughout the community, and they're listed on this flyer where they'll be. You're welcome to use those. Please be aware that typically by Friday evening the dumpsters are all full. So if you have items you want to put in, it's good to get them in there early. And then you're welcome to join us that morning. We start out at City Hall, and then we give out trash bags and gloves and things for you to go and clean up. You can clean up in your own neighborhoods or join us as we work on specific areas of town. So we always appreciate the help from everybody. Then the second flyer is about the program that we're working on, the outdoor recreation program. Currently we have a local steering committee, and we're working with about 10 individuals from across the state that specialize in outdoor recreation. They are helping us come up with a strategic plan. So April 6th, we're going to be having a community forum, and it will be at the Old County Complex on High Street. April 6th at 5:30, and it will go from 5:30 till about 8 o'clock. And we're looking for community input on ways that we can try to highlight and capitalize on outdoor recreation in our area. So the outcome of all of this will be a strategic plan. We picked four goals that we'll be coming up with in the plan. One of them is marketing and promotion and branding. So coming up with a brand for our community. Another goal was looking at trail connectivity and walkability in our community and our region. And we are looking at the region, not just grants. We're looking at Cibola County, and then also how we can partner with McKinley County, Zuni's, all the areas close to us that have outdoor opportunities. I'm trying to think. We have two more goals. They've kind of slipped my mind right now, but please join us on April 6th. We'd love to have your feedback and help with this project. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to contact me.
Oh, sorry.
So we just had our election come out. Many of you may have heard we're going to have 2 new city councilmen joining us, and it looks like they will be starting around April 1st. The state has changed the process a little bit. Our canvassing will actually go to the county to canvass our votes, and then it goes to the Secretary of State. She sanctions everything, and then we'll send it back and give the new candidates their authority to become elected officials.
So we will be canvassing the votes for this election on the 11th at 3 o'clock. And it's the only, we've already posted the agenda. It's a special meeting. And that's by law. We have to do this now.
With the election, we also passed the bond, and so that means the city will start to work on water and sewer lines. Because we passed the bond, now we've already been in the works working on USDA funding to complement our local funding. Now that we have a match, we can tap into USDA funds to have them come in and help us with those water sewer line projects. So we're very excited. It's greatly needed, and we appreciate everybody voting and getting out. We only had about a 15% turnout for the election, which is pretty typical. And so we'd always like to encourage more people to get out and vote and become knowledgeable about the issues that are on the ballots. Okay, I talked about that. The Rodeo Arena. So it looks like, I don't think the governor signed off yet, but it looks like we're going to be getting about $2.5 million for the rodeo grounds, and that's to support the development of the arena. A couple of us are going this Sunday to look at the Rodeo Arena in Stanley, New Mexico, to see, they just built an indoor arena. I am really pushing for it to be a covered arena with possible sides. The 2.5 million in no way is going to be able to fund an indoor arena, but we could cover ours like Socorro has. And if any of you are, traveling in the direction of Socorro, I invite you to stop and see their arena. They covered theirs, and then they have parking and an RV park and a couple of amenities, but they have increased their utilization of that arena, it's tripled. So we know that by just even covering ours and maybe putting a few sides to block the wind, we'll be able to facilitate. The whole goal and the idea is to make it a multi-use arena, so it won't just be for rodeo events, but for sports events, concerts, whatever we can tap into that we can bring in tourism and increase utilization. We have a couple of business people, one local and then some from out of town, that are looking at purchasing the Red Lion. And they presented a business plan to me, and their business plan incorporates developing a convention center, Indian cultural center. And they're partnering with Laguna. They're talking with Laguna to possibly bring in the Laguna Burger in the restaurant out of that facility. They're talking with a Native American tour bus group that are currently housed in Cuba to come and run Native American highlight tours from out of grants. And the idea is to make the bottom portion of the Red Lion Native American vendor booths where they could set up, the artisans could set up a booth to sell things, and then the top part of the Red Lion would be the hotel. And if they brought in convention type things and used the convention room there, it would help other hotels, because they probably wouldn't be able to house everybody in their hotel, so it would benefit the other hotels on the east end of town. They talked about an RV park in the backside and creating something like wigwams and alternative type rooms and shelters for people to come and camp. So I know I talked about the idea to a couple of people, and they're like, oh, that's not going to work. So it's their idea and it's their business risk, so we definitely are going to encourage any risk. And I always remember many projects we've done in our community, the people who are like, oh, that's not going to work, and ultimately a lot of times it does. And so we have to take those risks and encourage that kind of risk taking in our community if we're going to grow and develop. And any business aspect is a risk, I feel. But the thing they're asking from the city is for us to sponsor what's called IRB bonds for them. And so we're talking with the bond experts on how does that impact the city. It does not impact our debt, and it does not, we're not the ones at risk if they default. Kate may know more about IRB bonds. I've never dealt with them, but it gives the person purchasing tax break, I believe, in property taxes, and the community has to determine, is the loss of the property tax that we get going to be offset by jobs and economic development. And so it looks like they're wanting this to happen by summertime, and I'm always like, oh, I think it'll take longer than that, but we're in talks about it. I think there'll be some things. I don't know if the public has to vote on IRB bonds. Do you know? No?
No.
But we'll keep you informed on how that's working. But you know, we're always excited when people are looking at starting up new businesses and developing something, especially if it's a closed down building that's just sitting there. That always helps. We have a vacant building ordinance that is available now. We're going to have the council vote on it on the March 16th meeting, but I believe the mayor's going to cancel that meeting, so we'll probably have to advertise. It'll probably be March 30th. But the vacant building ordinance will impact vacant buildings in our Main Street business districts. So Santa Fe Avenue and First Street. So if you own a vacant building, you will have to register, and there's a fee to register, and then you will have to pay a yearly fee, and you will have to keep your building secure where people are not breaking into it, and it will have to be presentable where it's not such an eyesore. So I've not heard anybody complaining yet, but maybe they just don't know that it's coming down the pike. But what we're trying to encourage is property owners to take care of the property they own and not allow it to become such an eyesore on our main streets. So along those lines, you know, I keep hearing people complain about the vacant buildings in grants. And as I travel all over, I'm taking pictures and showing, okay, this town has vacant buildings. My husband's smiling back there. He happens to be here this morning. But, you know, I'm like, okay, let me get a picture of that vacant building, because they're everywhere. Even Denver, Colorado had vacant buildings and boarded up buildings. So why is it that when people come into grants, that's what they note? And I think it's because when you first come into grants, there are those hotels as you just come in. The ones mixed in down further on Santa Fe aren't quite as obvious because there's other buildings open and functioning and not looking so shabby. But it's those first hotels. So I'm encouraging our code enforcement to put a lot of pressure, but I was kind of wondering what you thought of the idea. I visited with Cindy about it last coffee, but you know, I keep thinking maybe we need to put up a big pro-panel fence in front of all those and make them murals. I was telling people this could be, put your mark on grants, and tourists could stop, and you know how they have the Cadillac Ranch where people go and paint on the Cadillacs in the ground and stop and do that. But ours would be put your mark on grants. We could put a big pro-panel fence in front of those to hide them at least until that area is developed. And I didn't know if people would go, well, geez, why doesn't the city just make them tear them down rather than hide them? I don't know what people would think about that, so I kind of wanted some feedback if you thought that was a short-term solution to at least make our community look better while we're waiting for property owners to have enough money. I've talked to one property owner, and he's worried that he can't afford the asbestos mitigation. And we've learned on our own demolitions that tearing down a building with asbestos is quite expensive. And so we've done that with all of our demolitions, and that's where the major cost comes in. So any thoughts on if we put up mural fences that people could decorate and put their mark on grants, or I don't know if people would pull off the interstate to go, hey, let's put our mark on grants and make a little painting. We thought there could be little machines there that sell the paint, you know, little bottles of paint, so that you could, and a paintbrush, you could put your, like a vending machine.
That's a good idea, but I was going to ask you something. Recently, there was some money set aside to help older buildings bring their buildings up to fire code, right? And so there's some money to help for the people who can't afford to bring it up to standard. Do you think we could ask for the same thing regarding the asbestos?
Yes, there's funding called Brownsfield funding, and our Council of Governments has applied for that every couple of years and have gotten money. So we are in communication with Evan at the COG to see if some of those funds could come to grants to mitigate any environmental issues in these old buildings. So we are in talks with people that have access to those funds. Yes. Any other thoughts along that?
I just worry about a lot of you'll have a lot of locals that'll put their mark on grants, and I think your maintenance
Yeah.
crew is gonna spend a lot of time unmarking grants. And I'm like you, Laura, when I drive around, I notice these towns and their vacant buildings, and I think a lot of it is they're keeping the lots clean and orderly and boarding those windows. You know, I think those are gonna help up quite a bit, and then that fence, then when PD's driving around at night, they don't have to worry about what's behind that fence.
Right.
So, that's just my 2 cents.
Yes, that was my concern too. The graffiti is tasteful and aesthetic, great, but it may just make it look worse.
Yeah, that's true.
Even just the methods of the gate would be helpful, right?
No one will want to see my art anyway, so I won't use the vendors. I'll
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a good idea though. I mean, you're thinking outside the box, which is really cool. You know, just keep thinking, keep talking. You know, there might be some, if you know of anybody who has ideas, I mean, there's always something out there.
Yeah, so I
That's a
don't know if you
good
heard Mr. Maribal said having the owners, you know, paint them, board them up better. Yeah, so that they don't look quite so bad.
Right.
Yeah.
How much teeth is this new ordinance gonna have towards that?
It'll have fines if you don't keep your property up to par, and that means the weeds and being boarded up where, you know, vagrants and animals can't access them. So it does have fines. It has, what we're trying to do is add a cost to having a vacant building so that it's less desirable just to let your property sit, because it's going to cost you more each year. Either through registration or fines, and we're just trying to get people to move on these properties. And what we've noted is a lot of people, they're asking quite high prices for buildings, and that's having them sit longer. And so, or they're asking for quite high rent. And that's not, low enough that people could move in with the business and make any money. Most of your money is going to go towards paying your rent. So we're just trying to get our property owners to think outside the box too. Is it better to have it vacant or to fill it and get some money? I brought Ray Jenkins here today, and Ray is our director at our airport, and I invited him to share a little bit about what's going on there, and you're welcome to ask him any questions, but he has done a phenomenal job in bringing our airport up to speed and making it a place that the city and the county can be very proud of. So, Ray, going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. The airport is a treasure that is not recognized by many people. How many people believe the airport's in Milan? Any hands? Well, even in City Hall we have people that think the airport's in Milan. The airport is in the city of Grants, completely surrounded within the city limits of Grants. So it belongs to Grants. Now, we put Milan on there for a couple of reasons. One is to recognize the Milan family who donated the land to the city for an airport. But the other is the community of Milan, which adjoins us. They say, well, where's Milan? I said, right across the fence. And so it's a treasure. We're trying to develop it. There's a lot of hindrances in economy and that, but one of the things that we're working on is development of the physical property so that we can bring in aviation-oriented businesses into Grants Milan. It's a natural blend, tie-in with the proposed industrial park. We have the interstate and the railroad, so all these things come together. The runway, we just put in a brand new runway 2 years ago, and the people that did First Street, Second Street, they need to come out and see how to lay asphalt. Our runway there is as smooth as this tabletop. And everybody that comes in comments. Yeah, I tell you, I've flown out of Kennedy and LaGuardia and some of these big airports, and we have a much nicer runway. Whereas our runway is 7,172 feet long. The runway at Washington National, Washington DC, what do they call it, Reagan Airport today, they have 7,000 feet. So we have more runway. But we're 6,500 feet above sea level, so we need more runway. But we do have not a large volume, but a significant volume of corporate jets that come in. And they run from the very small to the medium size. And come hunting season, we get a number of hunters coming in, some of them in the big dollar airplanes and some in the medium dollar airplanes. But nonetheless, they come, and it's a support to our community. The other thing is we have, and probably our greatest usage is by medevac. As you know, we have a helicopter based here, and if you haven't done it, let me tell you firsthand, my wife got knocked down by the horses one day, and it was $42,000 to ride on that helicopter. Well, for $50 a year, PHI has an insurance policy. I don't know if it picks up 100%, but it picks up definitely the deductible. So if you haven't done that, I urge you to do it. It's a lifesaver, and no pun intended, to have it here, and it'll get you down to Albuquerque without the traffic jams and all of that. So we have a lot of medevac flights. We have small jets. We have turboprops. They come in. We had one come in all the way from Roswell to pick up somebody and take them someplace else. And I've talked to the pilots, and some of them gone up into Denver and out in Phoenix. So the airport, if we never collected one bit of revenue for the airport, just the medevac flights alone would make it well worth our while to have that facility. So we're developing it, as I said. I'm looking at a study to get done this year to determine the property, the flow rate of the water. What do you do with the water and that? We already know we have good access to utilities. So it's a treasure that I hope that we can get marketable within the next 12 months. And so that's exciting. And beyond that, Morris patted me on the back, so if you have any questions about the airport.
Is there any surplus land around the airport?
There's ranch land around there.
I mean the city owns.
No, just on the airport property. I have some of this. The problem is it's on the far side of the runway, and there's no easy access to it. The property I'm looking to develop is the area from the firehouse to the northwest. And there's some that I got some pre-fill dirt from the city of Milan when they dug their big hole. And so that's where I would develop there. And then there's another area up by Dale Carnute, which is also North Quail, which is also Motel, which is also Aspen. Nobody knows what the name is, but it's right on that road. And there's some area that I'm looking to develop also.
So that property on the city's land that Ray's working on, we're trying to get that prepared with availability of utilities and all of that, that some industry could come in and put a big manufacturing, probably a metal building, and manufacture something typically for airport,
flight.
It has to be aviation related. See, the government keeps us in business. If it weren't for the federal government, we wouldn't have an airport. So pay your taxes. 90%, the federal government pays 90% of the costs. Of course, the one that has the gold makes the rules, and so they tell us what we can and can't do. And then the state gives us another 5%. So out of the city coffers is doable. Now, because they control the money, they say it has to be aviation related.
And Ray, do you have to apply for that money every year, or is it automatically granted?
No, there's, it's kind of a quasi thing. We have to, the federal government sets aside money for it. Then you got to apply. And if I have a project I'm trying to get done, and they say, well, you're not entitled to that this time. You're going to have to wait for some time down the road. And so we run into that.
Yeah. And about how many planes or helicopters take off or use it every?
We run about 5,000 takeoffs and landings, and that's not counting the medevac. Medevac does probably another 1,000 a year. Yes.
I'm under the impression that Medicare pays for air transport and that local carriers, the insurance only covers their planes if they're available. So do you know Medicare is lying about covering?
Well, I know Medicare does because my wife's on Medicare and my Medicare supplement paid 100% of it. So I know Medicare does it. Who else does it? I don't know, but I know other insurance companies do. It's kind of like in rural communities, they'll have an ambulance service, and the people in the community will chip in a certain amount to join the ambulance, and the ambulance then will drive them up to the city, the hospital. So I would assume that virtually all insurance companies will pay at least the required amount. What is it? Medicare pays 60%, 80%, whatever it is. I can't even remember.
Okay. All right, we'll turn it over to Kate.
All right, I don't have any exciting news like you do, so I don't get 2.5 million. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I know everybody saw the newspaper yesterday, and there was a report on the treasurer's findings. So I thought we'd bring our presentation that we did at the commission meeting, and I'll just go through it so you can kind of see what we did, and why it's important that we explain to you about that finding. So transparency is really important, and education is important as well. We've noticed, and we've stopped, and we've addressed a lot of things that should have never have been happening, not just the last 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, since the county was adopted. I mean, that's the case. So there's a lot of things that we've been finding that just should not have happened. And then just the education was not there to understand that you should not do that. So I want to kind of go back. In 17, when everything was falling, the sky was falling, the county was dying, and everything was really bad, we had 19 findings, and we were disclaimed, but we were also on the at-risk list from the state. So that meant that they didn't trust the county. They didn't trust the county to operate in a financial, but also understanding how the laws and statutes work. In 18, we had 13 findings, and we were still on the at-risk. Now, those are because it was the findings that we had were very significant findings. So we continued to work. So 19, I can tell you, we had 5 findings, and we were taken off the at-risk list. So we are in very, very good standing with the state and the federal department. Saying that, we have, out of the 5 findings, we had 4 repeated findings. which we just couldn't finish off. We had a few things. For example, I hired an asset company. We did it all. We basically labeled everything over $5,000. But one of the reasons why they kept it on was we couldn't find the deeds. Right? Don't laugh. Do you know where we found the deeds? In a lockbox at a bank that we had no idea that they were there. And I found those after the auditors were here. So those are the kind of things that it was like, they had to actually use a drill to get, we didn't have the keys. So, and there they were. So those are the things that kind of, open our eyes to a few things. So there's one new finding, and I wanted the treasurer to be here, and I think I want to praise her a little bit, Kathy. This is something that I have asked her to do things that are very hard to do. She stepped up in front of a commission meeting and literally owned this finding. She said, this finding was on me, and I made big mistakes. I've addressed it. It's not going to happen again. She didn't have to do that, and she didn't have to talk to the citizen either, and she did. So I'm going to give her some kudos on that, because that's hard to do when this finding has been going on for multiple years. So I'm going to explain the finding so you can understand what this finding is. So property taxes. Every department has a role. We have the assessors that appraise and assess the property. They then work with the treasurers. The treasurers, all they do is receive the money. That's their job, to receive the money into, they distribute taxes, but their main job is to say, thank you, Mrs. Jones, you've paid your taxes. That's it. What has happened is, when I was asked by the auditors to get the report for the penalties and interest payoffs, I said, sure. I said, hey, Pearl, give us the report so I can send it to the auditors. Thinking it was a page maybe or two. It was $189,000. So I had this little gulp, like what? What? So with that, I realized the report was combined with a lot of other things, i.e. every 10 years, every year we roll off the 10th year of property taxes. That's by the state, that's by statute. We also do notice of corrections. So let's say the assessors said, wait a minute, we've assessed that incorrectly, we've overcharged them, right? When they agree to that, they tell the assessors to take the penalties and interest off their bill. So we fix our errors. Those are notice of corrections. We also do, when we have lawsuits, the state will tell us, direct us, to take penalties and interest off. We, as a county, as a treasurer, do not have the authority to take penalties and interest off anybody's property tax bill. No reason. So once I convinced our auditors to say, let's reconcile what we have. So I actually asked Wendy on my department to reconcile the $189,000 to see exactly how much was not justified. I wanted to know what was justified, i.e. the tax roll-off, the notice of corrections, the lawsuits, all the little things that justified. She did that. It took her a long time. I appreciate her number. I don't know how she does it, but she does it. And we literally got down to $9,000. It was 140 separate bills, property tax bills, $9,000 taken off penalties and interest. They were not aware, the treasurers were not aware that they were not able to do that. They did not have the authority to do that. So there's no money missing. It was a procedure that they felt they could do. And quite frankly, I'm going to be honest here, when you have someone that owes a lot of taxes and it's just about to go to the state in the third year, a treasurer has the ability to say, this is a kind reminder that, if you pay your taxes, we can keep you off that list. That's a nice way of saying, come on, we can work with you. They did not realize they cannot do that. They do not have the authority to take penalties and interest off tax bills. So, once this is, with the help of the state audit, our internal auditors, they knew what we could do. They knew that I would take it, I would handle it appropriately. They agreed that they would use this finding as a anti-donation finding. So that was on our findings. I also agreed that once we reconciled, I would send the report and all paperwork to the state auditors for their investigation. I want to be as transparent as possible, and I don't want this to think there's nothing bad going on. This is the appropriate action for them to look into the $9,000. It was not justified. That's what we can see on our books. We have an investigator that is working with us. It's out of our hands. It's in the state auditors. I believe that as a county, we've done everything we possibly could to give them the information for them to investigate. I also believe that it's important you need to know. It's your tax money. And you also need to understand that it's been going on for a long time. A long time. People have come to me and said, well, I always go in there, and I just ask them, can you take the penalties and interest off? And guess what? It's been happening. So, it is stopped. We've put stronger procedures in place. I also feel that education is important. We have a great software system. We don't use it because we don't have people that understand it. They do not use it correctly. So we're going to bring that company in, and we're going to have a hands-on week for the Treasurer's Office so they can understand how to utilize the software so this cannot happen, and they understand why. We've also laminated all their statutes that they can look at and make sure they understand what the statutes mean. One of the other things is you have to understand what your job is, right, before you do your job, correct? So that's on us. If the county has not trained the employees, that's on me. So I have to own that. So I'm going to bring that in and train and see if that can help. And also, it's all about educating. It's all about learning and knowing what a software can do. I just automatically shut it down so no one can take penalties and interest off except one authorized person for such things as the roll-off, the taxes. So this is my chance to let you know what that was all about. So it's under investigation. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. It's $9,000. It's not $189,000. But it's 140 separate bills that those people basically got a gift from the county. And that's where the anti-donation states. You cannot give a gift. You cannot receive a gift, but you cannot give a gift. If you do, you're not being fair. You're not giving it to everybody, right? I'm trying to make it as clear as possible, and that's basically what it is. You cannot give a gift if you don't give it to everybody. So, anybody questions?
Does at-risk mean that you're at risk of the state to take over?
We're not at the at-risk anymore, but yes, we were. I think for 4 years.
Out of curiosity, how close were we to be taken over?
Not close.
Okay.
You can't take it over. Yeah, okay, we
We can't
can.
be taken over unless,
The governing body.
significant audit findings. When DFA came over here, the governing body requested them to come.
And that was a very good move. So, there's a lot of things. They don't want a county, I can show you. They can't even run the state, let alone a county. But anyway, so they know that we have to do our job. So, and there's tools there and people that can assist. So it's very rare. I don't know of any county that has actually been taken over. So, and Kathy did want me to mention that if you have any questions about this, her door is open. She'd love to talk to you. She's learned a lot, a hell of a lot, and my door is also open too. So I just thought it's really important. We've gone through 2 years of a lot of change, so I'm continuing with, you need to know. You need to know these things. Yes?
What's the status of the greenhouse taxes? Are they still in arrears?
I think so, I'm not sure.
So what, if that's going on, what are we gonna do about it?
There's nothing we can do, the state has to take that. We don't do anything.
You can take over the greenhouse.
No, we can't. It's unlawful. It goes to state. We don't take it, we can't take anything over.
So you can't make them pay the taxes?
No.
The last, I talked to the owners, and the last I heard, they had paid their taxes.
Yeah, I mean, they have a 3-year, everyone has 3 years to kind of catch up. So if they pay their, like, 17's year, they're still good. They're in good standing.
I think when you drive by the greenhouse and you see it, you can tell that they value it. It's been
Yes.
cleaned up.
Mhm.
They have a staff
Yes.
over there working every
Yes.
day. And they're planning to do something if the city and would start cooperating.
And also, you know, there's nothing we can do by law. It goes to the state. If they don't pay their taxes, do you think the county gets the money when it goes to sale? No, it goes to state. The TRD comes in once a year and does the auctions. All those properties that have not been paid their taxes for 3 years go on the auction list. And the state are the ones that receive the money. Okay? It's not fair, is it?
No.
But it's law, unfortunately.
Last I heard, they were up at the legislature requesting some kind of bill, maybe funding, I'm not sure, to be able to do a research, medical marijuana research, some type of research program. And Harry Garcia was the one that called me, and he was just asking if they had paid the city what they owed us. And they didn't pay us directly, but they had filed bankruptcy, and we filed a claim. We got paid the amount they owed the city through the bankruptcy. So we're clear and free. At some point, about 4 or 5 months ago, they were requesting that we provide them permits for certain things, but we don't permit marijuana or various things. It's at the state level. So we told them those are all things you're going to have to work with the state on, not the city. So we haven't heard anything in the last probably 4 or 5 months, but it sounds like they're still working on some possible prospects.
I know, Laura, they made a special, you guys tried to force them to haul the trash away. They made a special deal with the trash authority, but they're still not moving the trash.
Yeah,
Private to private.
Yeah, we requested that they haul their trash off, and they said they were going to do it a little at a time. So
They started, then they just stopped.
yeah, I have a feeling they don't have any capital to clean it. They cleaned it up, and it's all sitting out back, but I don't know if they just can't afford to haul the trash off. I think they wanted us to, and it's like that, you know, would be against the anti-donation. So, yes.
So what source of authority does the city or state have over local businesses?
Permits, fines.
Yeah, permits, if it's food or something that needs environmental approval, you know, certain businesses need licenses, beauticians, massage parlors need state licenses. We do a business permit, but we don't have any authority to shut a business down.
Welcome to the world of government. And we learn something new every day. I do have some good news. We added 4 new roads on our maintenance list. Last commission, they approved it, and we vacated 4. We have one table that we're going to look into. If you look at the packets at the back, it has the specifications of the standards. I don't know what page it is, but these are kind of what our ordinance stands, and this is how the committee reviews roads. So I thought you'd like to see that, like how many households are on that road. How do you request your road or a road that you think needs to be on the maintenance list? This is where we can go. So, and there's more information if you have a road that you think needs to be looked at and reviewed, come in and see Anna. Anna has a list, and we'll be working on the next lot next month. So, and I also wanted to let you know about rules and if you look on this last page, just so you can see how much things cost, this agreement that we had approved was for juveniles, for detention, for facilities that will house juveniles from Cibola County. So if you look, it's costing them a fortune to hold these juveniles. We used to have 6 juvenile centers. We now only have 3, and one's closing, so we'll have 2. So Bernalillo is the nearest one. If you look, we pay, every time a juvenile spends the night, whether it's 1 or 3, it's $165, it was $165 a bed. So if you look at 19, we paid for 529 beds, which means either we had, I'm not sure how that, we either had one person there all year and then a couple or whatever, but that was 529 beds and we paid $87,000. There's no revenue coming in, we don't get any funding for this. This is pure, we have to pay because they're our juveniles. Because of the cost and because of the special needs of juveniles, it has gone up because they can't keep it running, basically. That's why they're all closing, because it's costing a fortune. It's going to be an increase of 27%. So let's just say we have the same amount of beds, 500 beds, it's going to cost 119,000. So that's what I'm saying about unfunded increases that we have no control over. We have no control over. So I just thought it would be interesting for you to see what commissioners have to know and understand and learn, and it's just, sometimes it's just not fair. It's not right. Yes?
On the property taxes, it looks like the budget projection versus the actuals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It seems quite a bit off. Do you guys know why?
Yeah, so we're still collecting property taxes. When we calculate our projection, we use the rate from the certificate of property taxes, our collection rates from the treasurer's office, we use a 3-year average, and we also use the valuations. These are forms and they have supporting documents. We have to submit those to DFA. They make sure that we're in line with our projections. And so it's formulated for our projection, and as the months go on, you're going to see that increase. Like the next report, we track this every month, so next report they're going to be going up. The 2 main drivers for our county are property taxes and gross receipts tax, and so it's just the timing of collecting.
Any concerns about the GRT?
No, it's looking great. If you look on that page, on that graph, you see the line with the arrow where it ends. That flat line is the projection. So what we're doing, we've exceeded our projection every month.
And last year too.
So yeah, we're looking really good with GRT as well.
So Paul's going to talk about finance real quick, like he does. He's so good at it. He's a guru. And we fight all the time because he says no to me, and I don't like it. But anyway. And he says the word, the Constitution, sometimes, too many times. But anyway, but I love him dearly. One of the exciting things that I thought I'd let you know real quick before you know how sometimes you have to change your whole, you're going down a road and sometimes something happens, you're like, oh, this is better, let's look into this. And you got to kind of back up and forget about your lovely idea that you thought was great, because this is probably more practical. So we have the detention center that's empty nearly. Magistrate Court is purchasing land, and they're building their new courthouse. So they'll be out of there. We have the sheriffs. We were going to move it to we want to consolidate for costs. We have the 515, which we have the 911, which we were going to move to. We had all that ready to go for our building. So we got a phone call about maybe 4 or 5 months ago from the Armory, and they said, we'd like to transfer the property to you. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll better go look at it and see, how it's going to, I was more concerned about, I don't want another building, right? We've got 2 here, and why are we, so I went and I looked and I thought, And everywhere I was looking, I was like, this is something that we need to really look into. And so I had to pout for a couple of days because I liked my idea but we're going, this is our plan. And I've done a resolution last commission meeting. It's gone to the Armory and the board. They want to transfer it for no cost. We're praising the detention property and the 515, so we're moving forward on that. And we're planning to utilize that Armory as an emergency service complex, which will house all 3 of our emergency services. So it'll house the 911 dispatch, it'll house the sheriff, and it'll also house the emergency manager and fire marshal. So they're all in one. Not only is this going to cost us less for overheads and expenses, because the building is much cost effective. It's got 4 different heating units. So I don't know if you've ever been in the Armory. It not only has the space, but it's got the capability to be an IC when there's an emergency. It's got a huge commercial kitchen. Yeah. It's got training rooms. It's got a vault that is actually set in and certified for a proper vault for the sheriff's office, which is a finding that we've had because we don't have that. So every year we have some kind of finding about keeping evidence. They have an evidence room, which is brick, which has to be brick. So all these things kind of fell into place. And then we have an opportunity to look into, it's 10 acres. Now this is not for sure yet because they have not signed anything, but this is where we're going. This is what we're looking at, and I wanted to let you know. There's space in the back for a possible gun range. So a lot of people were looking at a possible gun range for training, especially for the law enforcement. But I'm just, that's where we're going now. That's where we're looking. I have to change my whole perspective of what's the best thing. But what I wanted was a multi-purpose training facility for the state. I talked to all the law enforcement academy, the 911 academy, the fire academy, and I thought it would be great to have that there for all those to come here rather than wait a year to be certified. So that's where my first mind with the economic. But when I went and looked, and it's going to cost the county less to do this, and so we'll have 2 main buildings, but the expense will be lower, and we'll have we'll get those appraised, and they will be sold. We have interest with the detention center, so that's where the last thing. So Paul, go ahead and do your
the estimated transfer date.
Government. So actually, I'm meeting them on Friday again, and they have the resolution. It's going to the board in the next couple of weeks. Once we get the paperwork going, the person that I'm working with, she assures me that it won't take long. That's on that side. We're getting the RFP. We received $650,000 for renovating the old tire shop that the sheriff was going to utilize. But luckily, because we made these decisions now, we had to. We can use that money for the renovating of the new building. So we can get the fence in, we can get the security in, we can get everything that needs to get in there, So I'm hoping by this time next year. But that government, you're talking, yeah. So anyway.
So, great questions, and on those projections, and just FYI, we monitor those so that we make sure we keep our expenses in line with our revenues. But just some county updates. We're submitting our reports on time to the state. Our fire department's awarded over $500,000 in grant money, which is great. The fire marshal has been able to apply for that this year, and he also was awarded some money. And being off the at-risk list, that's huge. We were 1 out of 2 counties that were on there last year. So both us and Mora were both off, and hopefully we'll be able to be our own fiscal agent again. We're reconciled to the bank through December 31st. We're finishing up January now. We submitted budget request forms to all of our departments, so we're all working on our budgets. We're starting on that. When we get them done and I get them back from the departments, I'm gonna review them with the manager and get her recommendations on it.
I have to tell him. I have to tell him. I have to tell you. So he is doing this with the departments, and I have to understand that I have to like let go of the budget, and I love budgets. So I listen in my office, right? And he had a department in his office.
I gotta fight her off.
And I'm listening to what they're saying and what they're wanting, and I'm like, oh, and I'm starting to twitch, right? No, they can't be saying that. And I can't go in there. And I thought, help. I went in. I was like, no, Paul, don't say that. You can't do that. So that's where we're not agreeing. But I have to he's very good at this. That's his job. And I have to let him do it.
You know, we ensured that we're gonna have a realistic budget. We've been consistent. We're getting to the point where we know what the department operational needs are. And so now I've created a new form, and we're gonna be putting it in our budget document this year for every department. So we're gonna put department descriptions, what their FY21 goals are.
Plans.
Reoccurring
expenses.
Projects.
Units.
Performance
Computers.
measures, so that, things that are measurable, possibly statistics, and get their 5-year plan for their capital outlay purchases. So that way we can at least get it on the radar for the commissioners, for the public to see.
I joke with him, but I have to say something. He's very good at educating these departments, because you have to understand they've never done this before. They never understood what a plan is and how to forecast and how to think ahead. So he's very patient, and he's very good at what he's doing.
So with these new forms and this extra data, well, let me go back to the process first. Then I'll discuss all of the budget requests with the manager. If we have, aren't in agreement with some of the things, we're going to call the department heads back in, try to keep all the drama out of the commission meetings, solve it, and then after we can get that resolved, we're going to come to the public with the budget. And I don't know, this is probably the best turnout that we see, over the commission meetings. If you guys want to do a public budget meeting here after a manager's meeting, we could do that. So you guys can see what the requests are
and why,
what the recommendations are, and we'll have commissioners here. So we'll probably post that there could be a quorum so they can hear you, because your input is valuable. And then we'll submit, we'll go for approval for our interim budget, get that submitted, and then we work on our final budget after we close our books, get final numbers. So we're on track, and we'll come back to you guys for the final budget as well, to get your input if you have any.
He's a good cop, I'm bad cop, and I don't like it. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you guys considering wage increases for these people that are working?
That's not even on the books right now. We need to look at what they need, what we need so far. We have bad news. I don't know whether you've heard this. Our health insurance, this is what happens when you try to get everybody at the same level. Great, they're doing well, they like their increases, and all of a sudden we get little birdie telling us that our health insurance is going up 15%. And take it 15%. And taking out Blue Cross Blue Shield maybe. So that's the kind of things that come down the pipe at this time. We don't know. So this is what we're working on all the time. We're getting, and PERA, I don't know whether you saw the bill with PERA. That's our retirement. There was some mistakes with PERA and law enforcement, and to recover themselves because their lack of understanding, I don't know, but now we have to, our percentage is going up, so our employees have to pay a higher percentage, and so does the employer. So all those make a huge difference. That the insurance, for instance, that 15% will be about $140,000. So those are things that we're working on right now, and cost-wise. So, okay.
I guess the difference between the finances of the county and the city are really shocking to me. I attended the last meeting of the council in the city, and the city is spending more than they're bringing in, And they talked about all these construction projects, overruns and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the city is cashing in $500,000 from the CD to pay some of the bills. And then when the CDs more come due, it's another $500,000 that will be put into cash. So I was wondering, is there any possibility for the city to have like a finance committee and or a construction committee for several reasons? All these issues were brought up really quick in front of the councilmen, and I have a feeling that some of them didn't do their homework before these things were brought up. Plus, construction projects, hundreds of thousands, etc., are usually, we're supposed to shut up in grants, but they're given out to outsiders. And they sound really very complicated. So if there was a committee of people not only involving the council, but some of our own people who are versed in construction, or even people in a community who are craftsmen, who know what they're doing and have some feeling about analyzing the construction projects and priorities, and for the finance committee to not only oversee things like if I understood things properly, the city didn't know that there were invoices coming in from the correction facility and they needed to be paid for like a year.
No, that's not correct. The county did not bill us for many months, so that's what the point was, is that the county hadn't billed us. So the money that we're spending right now with the city was budgeted. We're not out of our budget, so we have quite a lot in reserve, and we have for 5 years. The 5 years I've been at the city, we've had anywhere from $14 million to $10 million in reserve. And we just applied for an NMFA grant, and we were denied because they said we had too much in reserve. So when we planned our budget this last year and we had our major projects going out, the biggest one was going to be First Street, and it hasn't started yet. We budgeted to spend some of that reserve down, and intentionally. So that means we have to cash in our investment. A lot of that money's put in investments to gain interest. So that's what the council was approving. We were pulling $500,000 out of the investments to cover some of our major projects, 2nd Street, First Street, the design, all of those things. So I think it was a little confusing the way everything was worded. I know the paper said the city was, cashing out money, and yet we are spending more than we're bringing in because we intentionally budgeted that way to bring our reserve down so that we would qualify for additional state funding.
And that's allowable. I mean, if you have cash balance, you can even submit a budget to the state, and if your expenditures exceed your revenues, maybe you do have some large capital purchases you were planning for. If you don't, yeah, I'd be concerned. You get a little bit of a nasty paragraph on your budget memo when you get final approval. But, a lot of entities don't like that when they say your expenditures are exceeding your revenues, because, they are planning to do some big purchases. But
if you budgeted it.
Yes, but you got to have that cash balance or investment in place to absorb that extra expense.
So what do we have in reserves?
We have a good 10 million. And that's beyond the required reserve. We're required to have 1/12 of our budget in reserve, and we've maintained a reserve of 10 million. It's been anywhere between 10 and 14 million over the last 5 years. I thought we were going to bring it down when we did the construction on the library, and for whatever reason, more so that our gross receipts tax were good those years. Those 2 years that we were working on the library, the reserve did not go down. So we started this beginning of this year with 10 million in reserve, and we were planning to bring it down to 8 million. And more so, we don't want to get it too low because it's nice to have that cushion, but when the state's telling us we don't qualify for state grants because we've got too much in reserve, that's a concern for us
Well,
because.
I think there needs to be a healthy balance, because if we're putting too much away, then other things fail, like the roads and infrastructure, so there needs to be a healthy balance.
Governments aren't a bank, you know?
Yeah.
The taxes that we get from you guys should be used for services.
And should be planned to use for services, not reacting.
But, yeah, you know, like with the county, we want to make sure we try to end up with 3 million in cash in our general fund.
That's the reserve, that's what we consider reserve.
Because as a county, our main drivers are property tax again and GRT. So the city has a 1/12 requirement because they're heavily reliant on gross receipts tax. Those are monthly distributions. The state puts that reserve requirement because it gives about a month of cash flow to get into the next fiscal year. So that's why a 1/12. For the county, we've got a 3/12 requirement. It's about 3 months. I've been advising the commission, you know, we do try to keep, start the year with 3 million. That would be 6 months of operational cash.
That 3 billion is
Without our
not in our
investments.
budget, not in, that's something that we did not budget for. We want to keep that and we want to keep it healthy, but we also need to have a plan because we shouldn't be too healthy because like Laura, you get into a position, it has to keep moving. You know, we have to keep having plans and forecasting of what's needed.
And Joan, for big projects, you know, even small projects, we're required to bid them out. And so those projects get bid out. Unfortunately, for grants, we haven't had a lot of companies put in bids to do our projects. I think some of our most recent, we've had 2 or 3 TLCs put in bids for a lot of stuff. AUI, can you think of any others, Mark?
Mountain States is the only one that's semi-local that has, and I think
They did the airport, yeah.
It's
So
really frustrating.
it is, you know,
For
we
us,
would
too.
hope, and locally, we haven't had any that put in for bids for these big projects.
That's why I wondered about getting the people from our community involved in looking at maybe larger outsiders coming in, whether they're observers, whether they're apprentices or whatever, to build up our own ability to do some of these projects that will be ongoing for a long period of time. To get some kind of our citizens and our men involved in learning or overseeing or even like maintaining like the hydrogen sulfide disaster, etc. And that's only one bid. You didn't do 3 bids on that. So the idea about having more of the community considering these things before all of a sudden in a public meeting in about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going through, oh yeah, 300,000 for that, 400,000, well, okay. And people say, oh yeah, okay. But it doesn't seem to me like somebody has sat down with elected representatives and the people of the community to look at these things a little bit more and to consider and to ask questions before deciding on spending. To me, this is a lot of money. And even though you say, okay, you're not eligible for grants, you know, our city might be facing difficult times, and or if we had some disasters, to use up your savings in addition to the required amount doesn't seem to be wise to me. And it also seems like we should be trying to develop our own ability to handle a lot of these projects that need to be done or will be done by our own people, instead of hiring some companies that charge lots of money and that and then we don't know how to maintain these structures that we spend billions of dollars.
Yeah, you're right. We are trying to develop our own locals. We're doing that with our road crew and trying to do our own paving in areas that we can, the smaller projects, definitely not some of the bigger like 1st and 2nd Street, but we're trying to be able to develop the expertise to do a lot on our own. Some of these big things you're talking about, the hydrogen sulfide project, there's only one company in our state, and that's why they didn't get 3 bids. That's a pretty complicated science, chemical project
There are
that,
many ways to deal with removal of hydrogen sulfide. It's not just with this one company's methods. And that one company in their bid said, if you didn't accept this, talk to us about other means of doing it. That's $100,000 a year that you're going to have to pay all the time without considering other methods of doing
well,
it.
and you're not seeing all the work behind the scenes. I mean, you're hearing at a council meeting, but Mark and Don and our project staff, we have on-call engineers. We utilize Smith Engineering, Wilson and Company are the 2 that are our on-call. Those companies sit down with our staff and they help research what's available, what's out there, what are other communities utilizing for this problem. And then we also have a third, Forrest Grin's the one that built, helped us design our wastewater treatment plant. All 3 of those engineering companies were involved in that. And so they have people on board, they have teams of 14, 15 people that specialize in those things. We definitely don't. So we rely heavily on their expertise and not just using one engineering firm, but more, so that we get, you know, a second opinion, third opinion. So there's a lot behind the scenes, but I hear you. You know, wherever we can utilize and get feedback, it helps us do a better product. Yes.
I have a question about a technology question. I understand that the gentleman that was providing IT for the city resigned early last month, so it's been about a month maybe since he resigned. And there are at least 2 city websites with inaccurate information. I was just wondering what the plan is to have somebody fill the gap.
Yeah.
How many computers does the city have?
Before our IT director even resigned, we brought on an expert out of Albuquerque, Paul Stagner, who came in immediately because we had a server crash the first week. Paul came over that day. The county actually recommended him to us. The county ID department has assisted us quite a lot, and they recommended Mr. Stagner. He came in and corrected some things within about 20 minutes of coming on site. So we have contracted with him to work on our network, because we don't have a network between all city departments. We had a small network between the city and the police department, but the goal was to network everybody. So he's working on that. He's in the process of ordering equipment that we'll need for that. And then we have a couple of other people that are techs that have been assisting with the day-to-day stuff, and then also getting advice from Mr. Stagner. So we have not been without IT direct services. The website actually is put up by our marketing coordinator, and then she relies heavily on each department to update her on what needs to be on there. Do you know which website you're talking about?
Well, they basically use the code enforcement. When I tried several different times, I could not reach anybody because there are inactive email addresses on it. And I think it's when the city changed their email system, right, that old information
It's still on there?
is not on there. And
Okay.
Another example that came up last week was the Senior Citizen Center. Their website doesn't have, when you look to see who's on the advisory board, there are people who haven't served for a long time. And that's been my source of finding out. You know, I go and look at the different boards, or at the websites to find out who serves on which boards if I have a question about a particular department. You know, besides talking to the city and having the community feedback is another way to get information. So
Yeah, we'll work on getting those. The senior board just got finalized this last week when we were both at the meeting. So they were talking about who weren't active, and we need to take those off. So,
And
yeah.
thank you, because if we don't know, we can't
won't
fix.
know.
So
Yeah.
these are the
Yeah.
things that need to be told.
And just an FYI with the finance reports, we do these
And
monthly.
they're on the website.
Well, they're hard to find, so I've asked, I gotta talk with IT and the county manager. I wanna get these on the finance webpage, so you guys can track the county as well. You know, the more eyes on the numbers, the better. So you guys can have this information available to you. We'll have the budgets up there, the interim budgets, the final budgets, and so we're gonna try to do some updates for us.
And the census, we've got 2 opening positions that the county's going to hire, 2 temps for right now, possibly 4. So if you know anybody that would be interested in doing about 20 to 30 hours a week from like middle of March to, it's about 2.5 months, we're looking for people. So look on the website or come on in, speak to Anna or myself. We're looking for people, we need help.
So, and just an FYI with that new form that we're developing to collect the departmental information, we're looking to, when we get our final budget approved by DFA, we're looking to submit it to get it nationally recognized, to get it to a national standard of budget reporting. And hopefully I'll have met all the criteria. So that's one of our goals. And then after that, get some financial reporting standards in place as well. Let me go to our bond rating. So, you know, if you could put in the paper the county is in fiscal, has fiscal help, some good news.
We don't have to have us feel that.
We want some good news on the county. So there was a lot of damage done. We lost our bond rating. We're working on getting that reinstated.
And quite frankly, it was not true, that stuff that everybody was hearing. That was pure panic mode. No one knew the facts, and no one thought to even find out the facts before they talked to every government entity there was, from the AG's office to NMFA to bonds. And it's, to me, it's dangerous. It's dangerous of what was being said. Because we're working,
Yeah. So I'm still getting calls from like Moody's and Bloomberg with, they're calling up like, you know, what's going on? You don't have a bond rating anymore. You had disclaimer audits. That's why I waited for this audit to come out. They're working off that. We don't know, we had a rating of A2 and, or what was it? Sort of in the higher, above average, but you know, investors are worried about our bonds that we sold. We've been assuring them, you know, we've got new management, we're on track, they see our track record. I wish Mr. Whelan was here. Our relationship with the hospital is huge, and it's gonna...
It even affects the bonds, just so you know.
It affects the bonds, our relationship. So I'm working on getting some information from the hospital's attorneys so we can get it to our what's it called? I forget it. The people working on our bond. So we're getting that reinstated either way, whether we get a higher, lower, or the same. It all depends on the information we're providing. So we're working on that. We've got a new deputy treasurer, Johnny Pino, that the treasurer hired. And sheriff's radios. I went with Under Sheriff Monk to NMFA board hearing. They approved us. They were worried about our audits too. This is why it's so important. You know, have your audits in on time. Try to eliminate findings. They had concerns, but we're using the Law Enforcement Protection Fund money, which is a special revenue.
And they'd already heard.
Which can't be used for anything else except for sheriff stuff. And they approved it. So we're getting a $100,000 loan. We're dedicating the LEPF to that. 20,000 of it, we get about 29,000 in that kind of funding.
And that pays
It's been sort of difficult for the sheriff's department to figure out where they're spending it, so this is a great allocation for that money. They'll have still about 9,000 left to spend for the year as well for just that fund. So that's great news. Blue Water, they've got some an addition coming up for their fire department. We had secured a loan for them using fire protection funds. You can see some of the pictures in there of it being erected right now. Gross receipts are up, property taxes are up. You can see how we allocate our gross receipts tax here. And I put my notes in the back so you guys can get more detail on that. All of our general fund departments are within budget. They're doing great. We're watching that.
They are. They're really doing well.
Here's our monthly report. You can see we got 2 deficits and 2 funds. Those happen. Sometimes expenses are sort of occurred, but we're going for budget adjustments through the Department of Finance and Administration. We've got about $3.5 million in the bank in cash, operating cash. So we're going to transfer some of that to indigent and to farm and range.
So just an FYI, you see
those are normal things that we track.
We track the main ones like general fund. That's the one that we operate with. So
all
when we say 3 million,
be used for general purposes.
yes. So when you look down here and it says 22 million, that is not what the county has in reserves. It's just up here at 3. 22 million is for every other fund that comes.
No, the 3 million isn't our reserves.
Well,
that's
no,
our operating
that's our
cash.
operating cost. That's what we look
Our bond
at.
reserve requirements and state reserve requirements are in our investments. And some of those investments are our property tax accounts. You can see that they had gone up. It was never on the books. So we're, cleaning up more stuff.
And the road has to have a reserve too.
So I have a quick question. Why are sanitation and whatever vector control is?
Oh, the vector control, those.
Oh, good
those
question.
Yeah,
good question.
so we issue purchase orders. Those are contracts. So they were at the top end of that expense.
And they work in the summer.
Oh. Yeah.
So they don't do any work right now.
So they spend most of
They
the
spend
money
it,
in the
yes.
year.
Right away.
Yeah, so they're right on.
So that's a great question. And that's why we want to give you that
Vector
information.
control.
It's
The spraying.
the spraying,
Mosquitoes. Yeah.
So
And if you have questions, come on in, because we get, if you keep him quiet in his office, it's great for all
if
of
you want
us.
to see where these numbers come from, my door is open. So anyways, we're on track. This last page was just some of the budget adjustments we did last time.
You got any
And
questions?
That's
just
about it.
I'm wondering, how can the gross receipt taxes be up on businesses closing?
It's a great question.
We're asking this question too.
So if you look where the arrow is, just so you guys can get a picture of how you're reading that graph, that arrow for, what was it, February? Let's see. Yeah, for January. So we went up through January. The arrow is right above January. So each point correlates to the column below it. So this point is for October, this point is September. So if we look at the arrow right there for January, that's the distribution month. Those taxes were actually collected in November. Then TRD processes them in December, and we get the distribution from November in January. So just a FYI.
Yes.
So I've noticed some of our highest months of gross receipts are October, November, of course December probably because of Christmas, but I think that's the hunting season. And so we get a lot more people coming in than we realize to hunt. And they buy supplies and stay in the hotel occasionally, and so I've noticed those are our high months.
Yeah, fun fact.
But it's fun.
Our gross receipts tax, the cities and the villages, they're all very correlated with the activity. They're not at the same level of, distribution, but you can track the same patterns mostly every month.
Yeah.
So another important thing is, and I suppose a point of service, right? So say for instance you own a business in Albuquerque, but you do the work in Cibola.
With a
you
bid.
have to pay the tax rate for Cibola.
Yeah.
The contractor does, and so I always remind the contractors
Yeah.
working at home
Absolutely.
to make
Use the
sure
GRT.
that it's based on her point of service.
before I forget, elections are coming. If you'd like to be running for a position, I would love to have the opportunity to talk so I can, explain the expectations of an elected official. It's not just, being an elected official. There's a lot to it, and I've heard from other commissioners that have ran and won, and then they've actually said, if I had known what this job was before I decided to run, I wouldn't have run.
Look for qualifications. Remember, they only have to work 8 hours a month by statute.
So,
She loves me. She loves me. She loves me.
that's exactly what I mean, Paul.
So I'll get it when I get back.
Anyway, I have like books from NMC, from the basically it's a handbook explaining what the laws are, that what you can do in your in an elected position, and I have them if you'd like them, if you'd like to sit and talk with me, listen to what really is. The elected officials are a very important part of the government, but they're not. A lot of people are not understanding what their roles are. So I spent a long time educating the commission right now of what their roles are, because they did not know what their roles were. So I would love to talk to people that are interested. I think more the run, the healthier, because always new minds, new set of eyes is always a good thing. I have a healthy commission right now, and I'm hoping that we continue. So if you know of anybody that's interested, or if you want a handbook and you want to see, come on in.
So Joan's looking at me like the city needs to do that too. Our officials go to training, and Mike Lewis can tell you we're part of the municipal league.
We do too, yeah.
And so, in fact, our new elected officials are scheduled to go to training March 21st in Albuquerque to learn all the ins and outs, and they get a whole notebook and a whole couple of days worth of this is your role, this is what you're going to be doing, these are the laws. And then they have periodic trainings throughout the year. They can become certified as an elected official if they want to go through. It's called the MOLLE, and do that.
I know they have some basic training, but what I see is, I think they cannot be versed in all the complexities of finance and construction and setting priorities, and in educating our own people to do more of their own work. And many of them, I don't think even read the agenda before the meeting, or at least when I see the blank looks on their face, or just blind agreements or whatever comes up in 5 minutes, then I'm sure they do not really have talked about in the committee or understand or talk to the outside experts.
Most of them call our staff and they schedule time to go talk to them. I know Manny Vasquez scheduled time to go talk. If there's something on the agenda that they don't understand, they either call me or they call our project staff, and they meet with them ahead of the meeting. We do get a few people occasionally that don't read their packet, that is true, but the majority of them are involved in the process from the get-go. So there's a lot behind the scenes that happens.
And perhaps that can be more transparent, because the county seems to involve a lot of input or questioning outside of those 5 minutes of that meeting where all these things are presented. I think it would be helpful for the people of the community to have the same access to the city as they do to the county. I have a lot of confidence in the county, and I think you guys are doing a great job. But I don't know what goes on in the city.
Okay, we'll try to involve you more.
Can anybody go to those trainings, and how much does it cost?
I don't know.
You have to be registered.
Oh, they're already in?
Unfortunately, it's a registration for elected officials, so we have the training also. But what I'm trying to explain is sometimes people run and win, and then we put them in training.
Yeah,
it's such a good idea to
know
ahead of time. So it's kind of, but you can't, once they've won, then we have the authority to help assist with the training and pay for it. If they're a citizen, we can't do that, anti-donation. So
Yeah, but if the system is willing to.
it's connected within the government.
Yeah, I
So-
have a feeling they're pretty booked, because I know the hotels are usually booked up, so I have a feeling they can't accept additional, but we can always ask.
It's kind of funny, every time the new commissioners or the new elected officials go to this trainings in Santa Fe, and they come back, and their faces are just like, oh, I didn't know any of that. It's quite, I kind of enjoy it, but it's fun.
I'd like to comment on one thing. We are the ones that elect the people.
Yes.
And when you vote, it isn't just because, oh, that's a good guy, I know him. I was down at the polling place, and my wife leaned out the car window to talk to somebody and said, oh, this person's a really great guy. I've known him all the time. And my wife went to school with him. My wife says, yeah, I had a guy like that in my class, and he's in jail for the prison for murder. You know, just because you have socialized with him. And to complain about a counselor not doing their job, that's what you got in election time. It isn't our responsibility to do your voting. You have to do it.
You get them in office too, you can't tell them what to do, huh, Keith?
Yeah.
Their own department.
Paul, zip it.
Before we close, the next coffee is going to be at the library in the courtyard. The coffee shop there at the library has offered to sponsor the refreshments and asked if we would meet over there, so I'll work with the paper to get it in the paper. And I wanted to take a minute to thank Jimmy with 7 Cities, and
thank you, Jimmy.
Just we don't acknowledge their work, but because of them, this can be televised for others that can't make it, and we really appreciate their effort and getting here so early and covering the coffees and other meetings. We appreciate that, so thank you.
Could I ask you guys, would you like to have the public budget meeting here after
a workshop,
a coffee with the managers? If not, I can just hold it.
We don't want to do
I'll
something
post
that's
it.
not, you know.
Yeah, I know it makes a long.
Ideal,
long
because we're here already for the most part.
Well, we don't get
Not
much
another
turnout.
meeting,
We don't
right?
get much.
We're
public
trying to
input.
get, yeah.
Last time, you know, we had, I think.
We're boring.
A representative, that was it. Maybe 2 other people.
It'd be
So-
great, Paul, to have that meeting, but not after this meeting, it's too much meeting.
That's why.
That's what I needed.
Too
That's what we
long.
needed.
Why I asked.
Okay.
But I'd love to come to such a meeting if it's open.
Would you
Yeah, it
guys
is.
want it after work hours?
In the evenings
During
and
the day?
in the weekend, whatever. What?
What's that?
Daytime.
Daytime?
Daytime.
Okay.
Morning.
Morning?
Well, I think we'll have,
Oh, of
Oh, we
course,
do. We
there
have
will
to.
be, there'll be notice put
yeah.
in the paper,
And because we want the commission to be there, we have to, by law, by the Open Meetings Act, we have to post it stating that they all may attend, but no action is made. And we have to post it within 72 hours before that meeting. So that's why we have to really organize it and make sure, because it's really important for the commission to be there.
Do they come?
Yes.
yes,
Oh, yeah.
they want to hear you.
Oh, yeah. So we're already talking to them about it now. So.
Well, would more people come if it was not during the day, when some people go?
I don't know. I'm asking you guys. I mean, after hours, maybe more people come because they're off work.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
People from the county, you know, maybe they want it at 6 because they've got to drive in from El Moro, or, you know, they get off work, they have to go home and then come. So, you know, we do have time change coming up, so we'll have more daylight hours as well.
This weekend.
But,
If you think about it and you want to let us know, just call us. Come on in.
and if you guys have input, call me. If you want a little budget 101 in the beginning of it, we can do that. Go over all county funds. How they're
With me
supposed to be
twitching in the
used.
background. No, I'm just kidding.
We're talking about the Constitution. But, you know, let me know, give me a call, let me know what you want to hear, what you want to see. But we'll go over every fund in this budget process, so.
And we're lucky to have him because he really does keep us in line sometimes. Poor guy has 4 women around him, so, you know, he has to be pretty tough, doesn't he?
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your participation.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a lovely weekend.